Star Trek helped save Mission Impossible 2. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rojo Reads the News. I'm your host, Paul. Today's article is about movie news, which is something that I do like to cover. As you know, I like to cover business and world economics, things going on in the world, but I also like to cover fun things like lifestyle. I've always been a huge fan of movies. Today's article comes from MovieWeb. How Star Trek helped save Mission Impossible 2. I think this was an interesting read. It's difficult to imagine now, but there was a time when Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible was seen as a one-off movie instead of an entire franchise. I remember that. Yeah, the very first Mission Impossible. No one thought there would be a Mission Impossible 2. But recently, writers Ronald D. Moore and Brennan Braga discussed how their 1996 hit movie Star Trek First Contact brought them to the attention of Cruise, who then asked them to rewrite the script for Mission Impossible 2 after talks ended with the movie's original writer, David Marconi. Ronald D. Moore says this about how Star Trek helped save the Mission Impossible franchise. So, Star Trek First Contact, great storyline, directed by Jonathan Frakes, who's Commander Riker. First Contact came out November 1996, and a Paramount exec that worked on First Contact approached us shortly after the premiere in December. We had been approached by Don Granger, who was the feature exec on Star Trek at the time. He called us and said, "Hey, we're having trouble getting MI2 off the ground. I think you and Brandon might be a good candidates to help." It was obviously a big opportunity for us and a very fun one to go from having this great formative experience starting our careers working on Star Trek for the last few years to now having a chance to work on a Tom Cruise movie. Mission Impossible 2 is seen as somewhat of an odd entry in the series. Directed by John Woo, the movie is best remembered for its over-the-top bike jousting scenes and inexplicable doves flying into the middle of scenes, and Tom Cruise's barehanded mountain climbing bit, which created the concept of the actor doing increasingly more dangerous stunts in each new installment of the franchise. Those are John Woo trademarks, the doves flying, the slow motion, but even John Woo, when they were filming those scenes of Tom Cruise rock climbing, they were freaking out. They were freaking out the whole time because they were extremely dangerous stunts. As Moore went on to explain, even back when Tom Cruise was deeply involved in the creation of the film beyond simply being the main lead. He would meet with Tom every day for like a month, just hanging out with him and working on the story. It was wild. Looking back on it now, it really was cool that he did. We really liked him, and he was a great guy. Very smart, he was funny, he had a deep knowledge of film and cinema. I actually got to meet Tom Cruise very briefly when I was working at a hotel in Hollywood. And it was at a party. I can't remember the party. It was one of the talent agency parties. And they closed the lobby of the hotel. And it was just me. I was in there and a bellman. And they closed the lobby for the entrance of Tom Cruise. The party was going on in the other room, but the entrance to that party was covered with paparazzi. So they closed the front drive. The SUV came up. He walked in with his wife at the time, Katie Holmes, and they were all dolled up. You know, Tom Cruise looked very cool, as he always is. He had the long hair, and then Katie Holmes was all dolled up, and she towered over him because of these shoes that she was wearing. When they walked in, it was complete silence. I mean, outside is just chaos, lots of things going on. They walked in, and they looked around, and they looked lost, like they weren't supposed to be there. And we were all standing. They slowly walked towards the door. They walked right by me. There was so much tension in the room because nobody was saying anything. I just said, "Good evening. How are you?" And Katie Holmes, she looked like she was so happy that someone actually said something to her, and she brightened up and said, "Hey, good evening to you." And Tom says, "Good evening." Yes. And they were so friendly. And then they walked into the other room. That was my brief encounter with Tom Cruise. But throughout the night, I was going in and out of the party for various reasons. And throughout the night, I would see him schmoozing the other people at the party, laughing, telling stories. I mean, he is the life of the party. He really is an amazing guy. This collaboration between the writers and crews led to many of the movie's well-known scenes, including the mid-air hijack of a passenger plane, the concept of the movie's central MacGuffin, the Chimera virus, as well as the rock climbing sequence, which Moore declares was entirely Cruise's idea. That doesn't surprise me. That sequence was all Tom. Tom was deep into rock climbing at that point. He was like, I want to be rock climbing at the beginning, and we said, okay. My understanding is that the insurance companies were not okay with it, though. While the final product that Moore and Braga helped create is generally considered the weakest entry in the series, they have fond memories of the time they spent on the project. For Moore, getting to discuss filmmaking with Wu was another memorable perk of being part of the Mission Impossible 2. We got to meet him a couple of times. He was great. I was in awe of him because TNG writer and Deep Space Nine showrunner Ira, Stephen Burr, had got me into Hard Boiled and The Killer at the time, and I was so into those films. And there was a moment when Wu and I were alone, and I just had to ask him about the making of the tea house shootout scene that opens Hard Boiled. When he kind of lit up and said, "Oh, that was a whole thing," he goes, "We spent days plotting it out, working with the cinematographer, and he got so animated talking about it and how challenging that scene was to pull off." These behind-the-scene moments of how movies are made, when decisions are made or decisions are changed, and you get to see the reactions and the people who make these films. There's a very intimate moments in these people's lives, and to be able to witness that and be part of that in one way or another was a wonderful part of my life. Great story, taking us all the way back to these movies, First Contact and MI2. I think I might want to go watch these movies again now.